There is a specific moment most people who feel like a burden can describe exactly, not a dramatic one, just ordinary. Someone sighs when you call, someone checks their phone while you are talking, someone says they are busy in a tone that means something else, and something inside you registers it the way a body registers cold. Not with thought, but with certainty. You are too much. You are in the way. The world would run more smoothly if you needed less from it. If you have felt this not once, not occasionally, but as a background frequency that runs underneath most of your interactions, this is not a personality defect. It is a psychological pattern with a specific origin, a name, and a reason it is so difficult to reason your way out of. Here is what the psychology actually says. Number 1, you did not arrive at this feeling. You were trained into it. The belief that you are a burden does not emerge from nowhere. It almost always originates in early relational experiences where your needs were consistently received as inconvenient. A parent who sighed when you needed comfort. A household where asking for things created tension. A childhood where you learned accurately that the people responsible for you had limited emotional bandwidth, and that your job was to fit inside that bandwidth without exceeding it. Psychologists call this experience emotional parentification. Not necessarily being given adult responsibilities, but being taught to monitor and manage the emotional space you took up. You learned to read the room before expressing a need. You learned to preface requests with apologies. You learned that your presence was something other people had to accommodate rather than something they genuinely wanted. That lesson does not announce itself. It simply becomes the operating system underneath everything else. Number 2, the evidence you use to confirm it is selectively gathered. Here is what makes the burden feeling so difficult to challenge. Your brain, once it has established a belief, becomes extremely efficient at finding evidence to support it, and extremely poor at registering evidence that contradicts it. Psychologists call this confirmation bias. And in people who believe they are a burden, it runs constantly and quietly in the background. Someone doesn't respond to your message for a few hours. Evidence. Someone seems distracted when you are talking. Evidence. Someone says no to a plan. Evidence. Meanwhile, the person who lit up when they saw you, the friend who called you first, the moment someone stayed longer than they needed to. These pass through without leaving a mark. You are not misreading individual moments. You are running an algorithm that was written a long time ago, and it is only collecting data that confirms what it already believes. Number 3. You have confused other people's limitations with your own weight. There is a difference between being a burden and being in the presence of someone who had no capacity to carry anything. Most people who grow up feeling like a burden grew up around people who were themselves overwhelmed by unresolved pain, by practical pressure, by their own histories of not having enough. Their limited availability was not a verdict on you. It was information about them. But you were a child. Children cannot make that distinction. They make it personal, because everything is personal at that age. And so the message that was really about someone else's exhaustion got filed under your name. Number 4, you shrink preemptively to avoid rejection that may never arrive. One of the most recognizable patterns in people who feel like a burden is what researchers call preemptive withdrawal. Rather than risk being rejected, dismissed, or responded to with that particular quality of reluctant tolerance, they pull back before they've even extended. They don't ask. They don't say what they need. They minimize what they're going through to avoid being too much. This feels like consideration. It feels like being low maintenance, being independent, not wanting to impose. But underneath it is a strategy for avoiding a pain that feels inevitable. The pain of asking and watching someone's face tell you what you already believe about yourself. The problem is that preemptive withdrawal removes all the evidence that could contradict the belief. You never ask, so you never find out that someone would have said yes. You never need anything, so you never discover that someone would have shown up. The belief stays intact, unchallenged, because you've arranged your life so that it never has to be tested. Number 5. It makes you difficult to love well. This is the part that is hardest to say. When you believe you are a burden, you do not let people love you fully. You deflect compliments. You minimize your pain when people try to hold it. You insist you are fine when you are not, and then feel lonely that no one knew you weren't. You make yourself small and then grieve that no one sees how much space you actually take up. The people who care about you are left trying to reach someone who keeps moving the target. Not because you want distance, but because closeness carries the terror of eventual confirmation. If they really knew how much you needed, they would leave. So you manage the dosage. And the relationship stays at the surface, which feels safer, but lonelier. Number 6. You have started apologizing for things that do not require an apology. There is a specific language that develops in people who feel like a burden. Sorry for taking up your time. Sorry for bringing this up. Sorry, I know you are busy. Sorry for even asking. The apology comes before the request, sometimes instead of the request entirely. Psychologist Harriet Lerner notes that excessive apologizing is often not about remorse at all. It is about preemptive self-erasure. You apologize before the other person has had the chance to be inconvenienced because you have already decided they will be. You are not being polite. You are managing a verdict you have already rendered about yourself. And here is the quiet cost of that. Every unnecessary apology reinforces the belief underneath it. Every sorry for existing trains your nervous system to treat your presence as something that requires justification. The habit and the belief feed each other in a loop that tightens over years. Number 7. The feeling is not a reflection of your actual value. Here is what psychology consistently finds about people who carry this particular belief. They are almost never the people who have demanded the most from others. They are almost always the people who give more than they receive, who hold space for everyone else, who notice when someone is struggling long before that person notices themselves. The burden feeling and the actual weight you place on the world are almost perfectly inverse. The people most convinced they are too much are usually the ones taking up the least room. The ones most afraid of needing too much are usually the ones who never ask for enough. That is not a coincidence. It is the logic of the original lesson playing out exactly as it was written. What begins to change this is not positive thinking, not telling yourself you are not a burden. The brain does not update its beliefs through instruction. What changes it is experience. Specifically, the accumulated experience of needing something small, asking for it, and having someone respond without sighing. Of taking up space and watching the room not collapse. Of being seen at something close to full size and not being left. Those experiences have to be given the chance to happen, which means the preemptive withdrawal has to be interrupted, slowly and carefully, one small risk at a time. Not all at once. Not in the places where it has always felt most dangerous, but somewhere, with someone, who has already shown you, in the small ways that do not yet feel convincing, that you are not what you were told you were. If this described you, tell me in the comments which part felt most true. I read every one. And if someone in your life carries this quietly, without ever saying it, send them this. Because the loneliest part of feeling like a burden is believing you are the only one.